So today we're going to be taking a look at an old iPhone game called Tunnel Shoot that I played a lot when I had my early iPod Touches and iPhones. It was a pretty simple game overall. It did work off the gyroscope, which you can kind of see right now on this loading screen, where you can kind of control the background. I thought it was interesting. It was made by a small studio called Backflip Studios. This seems like these were some of their other apps as well at the time. I do remember a lot of these like paper toss apps because of the multi-flick kind of gesture that you could do. And yeah, I also love that not just here, but when you go into the options as well. Obviously, the games all have like 3D UIs and all this kind of custom stuff. And here, when you drop into like an options or a settings screen, it just drops you back into pure UI kit kind of controls and layouts and everything. Of course, seeing the old school pinstriping. This is like iPhone OS 6, I believe. So yeah, kind of enjoyed that. Another interesting part of this game that I kind of forgot from the time was this plus plus kind of service that it supported. A lot of apps at this time didn't really integrate in with Game Center because it didn't exist quite yet. Game Center, I think, took quite a while to become like a proper thing that Apple released for game developers to implement. And even then, not all game developers did it because Game Center was a cross-platform. But I do remember this plus plus subscription and kind of service being included with a lot of apps at the time. And it was kind of very similar to Game Center of today, where you kind of could compete with other users of the platform on high scores. You could have kind of friend groups and kind of other games that supported plus plus. I do think it's interesting. It's a little hard to see in this video though, but this like unable to connect network indicator is just this like kind of half opacity thing, and you can actually see the UI of the plus plus framework in the back. A lot of game developers could just essentially easily drag and drop that plus plus framework into their Xcode project, hook up to their particular subscription to plus plus for their game, and essentially be able to kind of ship that all with everything else included. Also, that was interesting. These other libraries the game is using, like this libpng, libjpeg, box2d, which I believe is the actual thing that's rendering the background and everything, if I remember correctly. And then tiled, which I'm assuming is some kind of like tiling support for games as well. So why don't we get started here? They have classic and insanity mode. Insanity mode is essentially classic mode, but just pretty well sped up and a little bit more enemies. But yeah, let's play classic for a little bit, and you can kind of see what this game is like. Like I said, it is fully gyroscope enabled, and that's the way you control your ship, and you do taps to kind of shoot and everything else. And overall, it's a pretty simple game. It always reminded me though of the Wipeout game that they played in the Hackers movie in the late to early '90s. I don't know why it doesn't fully look like it, but it gives off the same kind of like feel. And maybe that's why I always kind of enjoyed this game. But I do remember playing this a lot on road trips or on travel days or anything else. It was just a semi-mindless arcade shooter. It reminds me a lot of early to late 80s kind of shooters. Obviously, it's 3D, so it's a little bit different, but the same mechanics of just kind of like shooting for high scores and like trying to survive long stretches really kind of captures that classic arcade feel. There's no story to this. There's no levels or anything else. It's pretty much endless until it gets too difficult, too many enemies, and you essentially wipe out and you have to kind of start from scratch. I did always find it enjoyable, though. I don't know if I'll be able to do it. It did there for a second, but when you like glance off of an enemy or just like take a little bit of damage like that, you just kind of like your whole ship 3D kind of tilts a little bit, which I always thought was really interesting. It was like a nice little touch. Instead of just like taking damage and like the ship turning like flashing red or something, you had like this little bit of feedback of it twisting a little bit, which was a lot of fun. But overall, this looking at this game now, especially like it's pretty simple when you think about oh man, it's very difficult to talk and play this game. Overall, like the enemies, quote unquote, are just kind of like simple shapes and geometry elements. There's not a ton to it, but man, I played this a ton in high school and college. It was just like a lot of fun, and just one of those early iPhone games that I really remember being like my go-to. That if I got a new iPhone or if my iPod Touch broke and I needed to get a new one, it was always one of the first ones I always kept downloaded because it was just a lot of fun. It was an easy way to pass the time when you're just kind of like sitting around at like a doctor's office or such, and At this time, this game didn't really require any network features either, which was really nice, other than that plus plus service. So whether you had internet or not, you could still play the game. You know, that's kind of a slightly different thing compared to modern games on the iPhone and really all platforms for gaming. So if you go to backflipstudios.com today, it's actually just being forwarded to some sort of logo making service that's probably using some form of AI. So the company website doesn't exist anymore. However, the Wayback Machine and archive.org actually has a copy of it from, this is, we're looking at 2019's copy, and this is that Dragon Veil World game. Here's a little bit of history about them. They also made Ninja Jump, which if this is the same Ninja Jump that I remember, this was a really popular game in the late 2000s. It also speaks about them being purchased by Hasbro and how they are creating absurdly fun games with the world's greatest brands. So it looks like they almost started as like a small studio making games and kind of evolved into like almost like an agency, it sounds like, for Hasbro, the toy company. If we scroll down here, we can also see the big Transformers Earth Wars game that they were pretty well known for. I'm assuming this is how they got to know Hasbro in particular. And yeah, this was sort of their basic stuff. That, like I said, they were based out of Boulder, Colorado. And yeah, that's what their site looked like on April 29th, 2019. Obviously, the CSS and everything is a little screwed, but it's definitely interesting that some of the videos still play and everything. But if we go and look back a little bit older, I think we're going back to 2011 now. Again, another kind of licensed piece of software that they made was an Army of Darkness defense game. I'm assuming it's some kind of like tower defense game, if I had to guess. Yeah, this was that Ninja Jump game. I definitely remember that. And here's Tunnel Shooter as well, along with their older logo. Let's go see what they have for jobs back in 2011, if they have anything listed. Oh, they do. Interesting. It's just like a straight kind of thing here. They have a UI artist listed here, as well as a game developer, strong background in C++. But yeah, that's Tunnel Shoot. Like I said, one of my favorite old iPhone games. And hopefully you enjoyed this. Like I said, I'll be doing a lot more of these as I kind of go through different apps from this era and kind of record some footage just for kind of archival purposes, so we can kind of see where this platform kind of started and where it is today, and see how it kind of grew up over all those years. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next video.